All right, Mark Deering here from the Adventure Channel. We are going to break down, I don't want to use the word breakdown in a conversation like this, but break down the Marji Gesick race. We've got two of our team members here on Remax, two badasses here. We got Jon Howell and we have DeWaal. And they both just last week got done doing the Marji, and while it was fresh on their mind, even though if you guys can remember half of it, that's what we're about to find out. While it was fresh on their mind, we wanted to sit them down and kind of talk a little bit. So let's jump in, guys. And we don't have to reference and look at the camera. Let's just kind of jump right into it. So anyways, you survived and finished. You guys and one more team member, Brad. He has the sniffles. He couldn't show up tonight. But tell us about the Marji.
Well, I'll start by saying I did the Marji 50 last year, and I did it with Brad O'Brien again, and great experience. Long story short, I got talked into doing the 100 this year, so along with Brad and two other guys, and I was a little hesitant because the 50 is pretty challenging, as you can most definitely attest to, but to then go to the 100 is like a whole new level of insanity.
It is insanity, for sure.
So I knew what I was getting into to some degree, but not to discount the 50, it's just...
It's double, you know, right? It's we're crazy people.
But I didn't. Last year I did the 50. I was a quitter. I had to text quitter to the number. I had a bike mechanical. My free hub in the back was no longer engaging. I couldn't pedal. I was not about to hike a bike for 12 miles. You know, which can take forever out there.
Yeah, 12 miles is a long ways.
I had to bail, part ways with Brad. He carried on and finished, and I did.
I heard there's a little maybe bro hug, and then see you later.
There was. Yeah. Maybe some tears. But it was all good. Great experience. Came back for the 100 this year, thinking I knew what I was getting into to some degree, but way crazier, way more intense, way more exhausting, way more mentally
now, wait a minute,
challenging.
Dan. He hasn't done the 100 yet, so it's a piece of cake. You should try it next year.
I don't know that I'm at the 100 level.
So if you haven't figured it out yet, Jon has done did the 50, and you know, as we said, Dan did the 100. So
yeah, the whole premise of both races, though, it's like Marji 50. It's not Marji 50. It's actually Marji like 62.
62, yeah.
63 or whatever it ends up being. And it's not the Marji 100. It's the Marji 105 or 106. So, like, that's what makes this race, like, so different from a lot of the races we do. It's like, you know the course. Like, you know what you're getting into. The distance is the distance. They make it their mission to like mess with you.
For sure.
So even on the 50, I mean, you can explain some of those things.
Well, yeah, even the two fake token spots. Like, I got really excited to see. Well, you don't know about tokens, but you get tokens.
Let's talk about tokens.
Yeah.
Well, you have to pick up tokens at various checkpoints, and that kind of indicates that you went through the race, right? Yeah. And so these guys decided to put fake checkpoints up. So you see the checkpoint coming up, you get up close to it, and you see like the pumpkin face, because that's what the tokens are in. And you get there, and there's nothing in there, and it's just like another mind F with people.
Sure.
So you don't know, like,
you don't know
how
anything.
many of these tokens are going to be. You don't know where they're going to be.
So it's not 5 every time, or 7, or
no.
Okay.
So for the 50, we ended up with 3.
Okay.
I guess
and
for
the 100
100
was 4.
Okay.
So, but it could be. I mean, I don't.
And you don't know where they are.
Yeah.
So I think last year they said most of the tokens came at the end. This year, the last token came at the end, and the rest were spread out through the course. Yeah. So
this is starting to make sense. So I've never done the race. don't think I ever will, but this is starting to make sense. So I was watching videos, and I forget who it was on Facebook. They're emptying their pockets, looking for another token, and it almost felt like, well, isn't that a short amount of tokens? And they were kind of messing with him a little bit, and he had the right amount. Mm-hmm. So I think it was Todd, the race promoter, was whoever was counting his tokens, and almost. So even at the start of the race, you didn't know how many tokens?
Nope.
Mm-mm.
See, that's what they're messing with.
They're
them.
really clearly, like, they say, I mean, the big orange sign says checkpoint ahead. And then, maybe 25, 30 yards ahead is the actual checkpoint with another orange sign with a little pumpkin, and it's got wooden tokens in there. And you put them together, and I think yours was like find your limits.
No, well, I didn't have find,
Okay.
so I just had your limits and finisher.
Okay.
And so the 100 milers had find your limits and finisher.
Yeah. So you don't know where they are. You don't know when, how many, at what point. Like you said last year, like I didn't get any of them because they were all at the end, and we hadn't crossed any of them. And I got 52 miles done
of no tokens, yeah.
of no tokens. And you come across people and they'll be like, "How? Any token? Like, have you?"
Yeah,
like
everyone
people,
on the trail is like, "Did you get tokens? Did you get?" Because I mean, you have to go to like a mental place that you're just grinding. Your head's down. You're just grinding, and I can see how it could easily pass like a checkpoint. I mean,
and people do it.
People do
every
it.
year. It's like there's people who miss a token, and you either quit, like they DNF you, even though you do the whole course, or you have to go back and get it.
So the course, it's not very well marked.
The course is very well marked.
Okay, the course is very well marked.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that was one thing. I don't know about you, but I had this last year and again this year. I have a Garmin. You load the course with the GPS, and that's another way that they mess with you. They don't release the course until the week of, like midweek. So it
like
came
Wednesday
out
night
Wednesday.
at midnight or something.
And then, Todd's messing with you on the Marji Talk page on Facebook saying, there's an issue with the GPX file. Like,
A lot of
hang tight
mental.
and just messing with people because everybody, like, a lot of people like to have their, like, I got my
You got
course.
a plan. You got a plan.
I got the plan. I know when my stops are going to be. They map all that out, and they try and like mess with you that way.
That sounds like Todd's. I mean, and so when we interviewed Todd, like you had talked about before this, that's kind of his thing is mental toughness.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, what did you say on the interview? He said something about the least practiced skill on a bike is being able to push it.
Yeah.
And I mean, how were you guys pushing a lot?
Oh, yeah. there's a lot of push and hike a bike.
I finished that race 4.6 miles per hour.
That's great.
4.6
Mine was 5.1. Okay. So.
It's so pathetic. But then you like, if you ride out there, then you're like, yeah.
Well,
This is kind of what it is.
So. These guys, you guys being faster guys on the team and whatnot, I see those average mile per hours come across, and I'm like, and I'm usually, under you guys as it is, so I'm like, holy crap! I mean, this puts you guys through the ringer. I mean,
yeah, but we also we're doing the course backwards than how if you were to go up there and ride the course, you would ride up and ride down, and we're riding up everything.
Oh, okay.
Right. Yeah. So a lot of the difficulty was you're trying to go up what downhillers go down.
Okay.
When it's chunky downhill too, it's unlike anything I've ever ridden
chunky
before.
uphill then.
Chunky uphill.
As riding mountain bike trails around West Michigan, it's hard to train.
Oh, for sure.
For Marji because we just simply don't have that terrain, that kind of elevation, that kind of anything. Yep. The rocky, rooty trails that are just everything up there. We just don't have.
We don't have usually the bikes either, right? So
Right.
we could segue into talking about that a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
you rode a rigid fat bike
Yeah.
on the 100.
Yeah, so I mean, I have
Crazy.
from anyone's perspective, I have a lot of bikes. I have I have a gravel bike, I have a hardtail, I have a fat bike, and I even have a single speed commuter type bike. I don't have a full suspension and didn't have one last year. And so it was really, last year it was down to hardtail or fatty. I brought both up the night before. Brad and I are riding both bikes, just kind of getting a feel for it, going back and forth, made the decision on the fatty. Hands down, I would ride that 9 out of 10 times up there if I didn't have a full suspension
Right.
bike. Did it on the 100, this year, and again, like it was flawless. Like it was
Okay.
just the extra wide tires,
Okay.
just being able to roll over a lot of things that I wouldn't if I had had my hardtail. I think I would be a lot sore.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
did
yeah,
it.
for sure.
And my fat bike has a more relaxed geometry, so
Gotcha. Yep.
it's not in like aggressive race stance. So like, I think it saved
Your
my
back
body
and
and
your-
back a
Yep,
little bit
yep.
than if I, had my niner. Now that being
Yeah.
said, the bike to have up there is a full suspension with a dropper post.
Oh, yeah.
And
I would agree.
really aggressive knobby tires,
Yep.
which I don't have that bike.
It's a
but-
specialty bike. I mean,
Yeah.
that's something that, like you say, around West Michigan, it's overkill. And I was telling you, actually, when you first got into racing a little bit, I'm like, you want a hardtail, minimalist,
Yeah.
lightweight hardtail, fast rolling tires. That's the
Yeah.
West Michigan bike. But the bikes you started out on are the bikes to have up there.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
when,
Yeah.
And what did you ride? I forget what you rode.
So I rode a full suspension, 140, 130,
Okay.
with a dropper, which was great. That's the bike.
Basically cheating if
Yeah.
I mean, really.
In comparison, yeah. So
No
and-
dropper, hardtail, or rigid, fat bike.
I would say probably what? I mean, of the 50 and the 100, 90 to 95% of the bikes are full suspension.
Oh, for sure.
I mean,
For
you
sure.
got a
didn't see.
handful of hardtails and fatties, but
Yeah,
they're
you've
all-
got a couple crazy people out there, but 95+%, 99% are full suspension.
Yeah.
Okay. So talk about
then-
your bike that did it. I mean,
So
let's start with this. So Jon has been on a race team for not even 2 years.
a year and a half,
Yeah.
year and a half.
Racing for only about
Yeah, Marji was my third race, first endurance race, so to speak. So,
say what races you've done in order.
all right. So I started off. I'm the type of guy that I just take my time pedaling up, and then I just fast as I can go downhill. And then I met these guys, or you guys, and I was like, well, shit, man, these guys go fast uphill too. So I had to try to figure that out because that's not what I'm used to. And so I joined the team, and so last year, 2021, the Luton time trial was the first race I'd ever been in. And then shortly
Remember
after,
you being all nervous.
I was all nervous.
I was giving them all the tips.
And like 2 weeks before that, my shock went out on my bike, so I had to transition to the fat bike. And so I raced with a fat bike, and then several weeks later was Mud, Sweat, and Beers, and it's like, my XC bike is still not ready, so I had to do Mud, Sweat, and Beers on the fat tire bike. So I was not necessarily prepared for Marji
so
whatsoever.
2 races and then Marji.
Yeah, so my third race. So I signed up for several races this year, but external factors that we all have made it where I just couldn't race. And so Marji was my third race, first endurance race. And I was extremely nervous because leading up to that, 39 miles was the longest I'd ever been on a bike. Now trying to train for it, I was trying to do like 25, 30 miles here, 25, 30 miles here.
How many hours we talking?
Well, for far as hours now, I do travel and ride with friends. So I had spent like probably 7 hours was the longest saddle time I've ever had, and that was down at DuPont.
Okay.
And that's like a 28-mile ride. Me and my buddies just kind of took our time and just kind of rode DuPont. And so I was extremely nervous from that aspect. As far as like finishing, I'm a pretty stubborn individual, so I was like, I've got 24 hours to do it. So unless I injure myself or
25 actually.
Yeah. So unless I injure myself or my bike just blows up like yours did last year,
Yeah.
I will finish this race. I don't care if I have to walk it. I'm going to finish it. But I was extremely nervous. And then I guess early packet pickup. Whenever I ran into you guys, I think they could. Dan and Brad could tell how nervous I was because I was just like a ball of nerves. I didn't know what to expect. And they're like 11 hours, 12 tops. I was like, you're full of shit. There's no way. There's no way. And then on top of that,
Sorry, what did you finish in?
11:16. So
Yeah,
you guys were pretty accurate on my finish. And I was a ball of nerves for a lot of different reasons. Yeah.
And,
I called Mark.
And I'm like,
I was like, call Mark, trying to calm me down.
I'm getting ready for a Luton time trial tomorrow. I need like half a bottle, one goo.
Yeah. I mean, I was nervous for a lot of different reasons, but
Hey,
I pushed through.
The good news is you can actually probably safely say this. It's all downhill from here. Doing that right. Well, if you do the 100. I've ridden in various states and I've ridden various trails, but I've never ridden something that's, unless you're on a fire road, start to finish, that is that technical. Like, Marge is no joke. Like, it's like you read the stories and you're like, I think I'll be all right. But then you get on it and you're like, shit. Yeah, you come from like how we met you. You know, he does bomb down the hills and he's full suspension. He's doing the tabletops. He's doing, and so I'm like, Jon can do that, especially on the right bike. He's got the right mentality. But even to hear you say that,
it was a hard race. There's no doubt about it. I mean,
there were sections that we were doing. Brad and I were like, I bet Jon is gonna just bomb down these. Like, this was made for downhiller. Some of these sections.
Yeah, I love chunky. I love technical. When I'm not great by any means, but that's what I grew up. That's where I learned to mountain bike, is on that type of terrain. But this was just like, it was like nonstop. You'd get through a technical section, you get on your bike and start pedaling, and 15 seconds you'd have to get back off and push your bike because it's impossible to go up.
I mean, if I had to summarize that course in one word, I think the best word I could come up with is relentless. Like, it just, as you just described, it just never quits. Like, when you're going up, and you're walking your bike, and you're like, hike a bike, and you get back on, and it's like no time, you're doing the exact same thing. You're hike a biking again, and you're climbing, and you're climbing, and you're climbing, and it's just like, how in the world can we still be climbing? But you just climb.
Keep going.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
It's just relentless. It does not give you a break.
It doesn't. I mean,
so
I don't know.
Is there any, coming from the have never done it, is there 5 mile stretches that's kind of fun and like fire road stuff?
Yeah, there's like a 2 mile stretch, like 2 miles into it, when you're like, you do like this on a gravel road forever. And I was like,
that's Marquette Mountain.
Yeah.
That's the very start. So you start
horrible.
at the 50, The 50 starts right at the old ore docks.
Yeah.
Overlooking the bay. Like, it's
beautiful.
Fantastic start. Like, I remember that, and I'll never forget that. It's just a beautiful, and you just like start and you roll out, and it's like 4 or 5 miles of just like flat.
Yeah, it's nice.
And you're
it's
like
oh, okay.
trail, paved, whatever.
You're like, this isn't so
It's
bad.
another
and it
mine.
sends you right up Marquette Mountain, which is just a dirt road that just goes and goes and goes and goes.
It was horrible. That first 20 miles was probably I've never thought about tapping or quitting, but those first 20 miles, so I got a funny story. So right after we go up the Marquette Mountain and then you get into the trails, I lost my my bottle that had my electrolytes in it.
Okay.
So let's just say that's like 6 miles into it. And so this is user error, but towards probably about 15 or 16 miles, I realized that my Camelback that I just bought a new bladder, just set it up. Well, apparently I didn't push the nozzle in all the way, so I had a slow drip.
Oh.
And so about miles 15 and a half, 16, I was completely out of water.
Oh.
And I started cramping. And so probably about mile 18, I had to get off my bike. It was another up. There's so many uphills. I don't know the names of things, but I had to get off my bike and start pushing it. And I couldn't lift my left leg because it was cramping so bad. So I just drug it across the gravel. And then it seemed like for maybe a mile or two. And then I don't know what happened, but I just got back on the bike after we got up the hill and I just started pedaling. And it's like, there's not a whole lot of miles before I get to Jackson Park. I'll get there, I'll refuel, and everything will be okay. And once I got there, and I probably took that first stop, probably 15 to 20 minutes. It's like,
Just regrouping in your mind.
I had to. It's like, I need to chug some electrolytes. I need to chug some water. I had plenty of food. But I was like, I've got to take time here to completely get kind of regroup and get rehydrated before I take on.
Just to put it in perspective, so 18 miles, you're running out of water already and cramping. How much time are we at about 18 miles?
I got to Jackson Park in like 2 hours and 30 minutes, so I don't know. So
cramping already because of the hills? Because usually
I think it's just because I had nothing to replenish my body. And
well, we should add, like, Marji is a unsupported race.
Right.
So the 50 and the 100 unsupported. What that means is the race itself does not provide any kind of aid stations or anything for you as a racer. Now, there are checkpoints along the way, and you can have your own support, like people that follow you around, and like at Jackson Park is one of them, where at the 50 you cross twice. Same thing with the 100, and you can have people there with hydration, food, all that.
So that's a mental toughness too, is you only had to go to your own packs of things.
Well, okay, so the people there were phenomenal and fabulous. Now, I was doing it solo. I had no race support, so I had a drop bag at Jackson Park. Now, this is part of my stubbornness, is that I probably could have gotten water from people as that last 5 or 6 miles, but it was, I don't know if it's embarrassment, I don't know what it was, but I've
been there before on a hike.
I just kept pushing through. No, like, I put myself in that own situation because of the mental aspect that, for whatever reason, I passed the car that was cheering me on that I'm positive they had water because they're cooler there. But I was just like, thank you, and I kept going instead of saying, can I please have a water? Now, after the first 20, I learned that, and it's crazy, you guys told me not to pass up any water.
We made that mistake last year.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think especially a first timer, like you kind of have a mental, like you don't want to get help where you don't need it, and it's just, I don't know. It's
So you're
a
saying
big
like
mental.
the trail angels that are out there, right?
Tons of trail angels.
And so trail angels.
So you can have your own support, but the stipulation is like, you know, for the race rules is like your support can't refuse helping another racer.
Right.
Like if they need
So if I'm standing, I
water,
gotcha.
yeah, you've got to be willing. They've got to be willing to help. They can't just be there for you.
Neutral support or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like, my wife, Brad's wife, were our support, and they met us at different points along the way. And my wife like talked about helping like other racers and giving them water and like, because you're in that desperation. Like last year we ran out of water and we're like, oh, we're almost to the checkpoint. And what you don't understand, or it's hard to understand biking around here, is like 2 miles up there can be, I mean, you can be hike a bike for like 2 hours, you know, for 2 miles.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're basically moving along 2 miles an hour.
Oh.
You know, so
Yeah, you can't. You just
with no water, you know, if you run out, and then you can really be in a world of hurt. So that's where it's like you don't pass that up. And we learned from last year, you know, on the 100, and we stopped probably at least 2 different like people we didn't even know that were just more than willing. That's what's great.
Oh yeah,
that's what's great about that race.
Oh, the community is phenomenal.
The locals embrace it, other racers support, embrace it, and just like whatever we can do to help you finish, they'll do it.
That's a great tip actually for, you know, say your spouse or whoever's going to go up there and support. Take extra water, take extra food.
Sure.
Like if you take just your calculated amount and somebody else is like dying and needs some, you're sorry, no. I mean, you feel, you know, you got.
Look, I overpacked in my drop bag of like what food I would need, but you can only eat so much or the same thing for so long, and so it's like at the checkpoint, or not checkpoint, but at Jackson Park, you had people making grilled cheese sandwiches, pickle juice shots. I mean, you had all kinds of. I mean, the community was unbelievable, but
there was a random aid station, like from some locals. It was on a power line section that we were crossing. Oreos and pickles.
Ooh.
Not the greatest combination, but on race day, it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, what's some of the craziest food you found out there? I mean, there's probably shots, people trying to give you shots. And
Yeah, there were quite a few shots, especially the last leg. I'd say with like maybe 10 miles to go. Is that where it is, where the lake is? You're coming through it. You're coming through it dark.
Yep.
But
it was pitch dark.
Yeah. There's like a lake there, and they were offering pretty much whatever you want: water, Coke, beer, shots.
I had a beer there. It was the best tasting beer.
I had a beer there as well. There's about 10 of us that rolled into that at the same time, and it was we were all giddy. You're like, beer.
I think Brad and I rolled into that one. We were 10 miles away, and I think that was around midnight-ish, 1 a.m., something like that.
Jeez.
When we hit that lake. And Danny Hill, the course, the guy, the mastermind behind the course, he was there. He was sleeping in a chair.
Was he really? I think I saw a picture of that.
Okay.
Yep.
So it was cool. And these guys out there just...
It was, again, I can't compare it to mini races because that was my third.
Than Luton?
Yeah, you're right. That was my third one, but I cannot imagine like the trail angels or community support being. There's no way it can be better at any other race. And from everything that I've read, it's like Marji is like top notch from that aspect, which I definitely appreciated, because after that first leg, I was like, okay, I'm going to embrace
Yep.
I'm going to embrace these trail angels.
Yeah.
And it was great.
I think the mentality of a crowd like that. I went up and supported. How many years ago was that? A few years back, and Scott Warden was racing. Casey and I were, helping out, and to sit on the sidelines and watch you guys, and you want to be nothing but help. If it's moral support, if it's whatever, because just watching you guys go through that, so you're right. I bet you it's one of the best. Support. It's not supported, but support. Style races where you're feeling for you guys. Going through this. And towing the line even.
Everybody was yelling. Like you'd come around a corner and there'd be like, I came up this one time. This is the last leg, and it was a guy and his like 6-year-old daughter, and out of nowhere, no one else is around, and they're in this random corner, just cheering for you. And it's like that's so cool. I mean, I don't know. Again, not many races, but I can imagine that being elsewhere. So, I don't know. I thought it was awesome race, brutal race, but very, very cool.
It's hands down the hardest race I've ever done. Probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, you've got a pretty good resume. You've done some big ones.
We've done some big ones, Lumberjack, Mohican, the Barry-Roubaix Psycho. Coast to Coast, which is Lake Huron to Lake Michigan, 211 miles, gravel. This, hands down, is the toughest race I've ever done. Probably ever will do, because from my perspective, it's a one and done. Like
50 or 100?
For the 100, it's a one and done. I could do the 50 again, but I don't feel that I need to do the 100 again.
I was going to ask that. You're getting. This is good. This is good.
So Brad and I finished together. We did the entire race together in 22 and a half hours. So it started Saturday morning, 7:30. We rolled in to downtown Ishpeming at the finish line. It was like 6:03 a.m. on Sunday morning. Jeez. So just completely exhausted.
Oh, I'm sure.
I mean, almost a full 24 hour, like a full day of being on the bike.
I remember that day. I did like 5 or so things, right? And at the end of whatever I was doing, I'm like, they're still on a bike. They're still on a bike. They're still on a bike. So I wanted to ask you about that. So you and Brad have done a lot of rides together, a lot of races together.
Yep.
There's got to be times where you guys know each other now well enough. This is Dan's strength. This is Brad's strength. You just kind of learn each other, push each other. I mean, it's got to be helpful to have that person that says, you got this, or, so I've kind of thought about that both ways too. If you're in the woods, 3 a.m, you got your light on, there's no light ahead of you, there's no light behind you, versus what you get. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, so, like you said, Brad and I have done a lot of pretty epic races and rides together. So we know each other pretty well. And it's like when you go through, you're just completely fatigued and exhausted. You're pushing your body to the limits. That's when you like really kind of figure out who you are, when you're, that is the find your limits, the mantra of Marji. And so Brad and I have been in those situations and have a pretty good idea of each other's strengths. To Brad's credit, all race long, like all day long, he was riding really strong. Like, all the way up until about the last pass through Jackson Park, which is about mile 85, 86. I was going to say
85, yeah.
And he was just motoring along. And he and I were sticking together for the most part, and we decided ahead of time that we were finishing this thing together. At that point, the last section, which was another 20 miles, and I should start by saying, up till about mile 65 is the easy part of the 100.
There you go, John.
The last 40 is when it gets real serious. So it's basically two 20-mile blocks. The first 20 took us 6 hours. The second 20, the last 20 took us 6 hours. So we rolled into Jackson Park for the last time around midnight. And at that point, we were both exhausted. A lot of people, we found out after the fact, bailed at that point and said it just couldn't. And it's like, oh, you're so close, but not really. I mean, we had 6 more hours.
6 more hours, yeah.
But from midnight to 6 a.m., you know, Brad and I are, you know, right next to each other, right by each other. It's a world of a difference to have a buddy next to you. When you're in a dark place, he can encourage you and push you and say, hey, we got this. When he's in a dark place, it's the other way around. Like,
that's what I was
come
picturing.
on, you know. And that definitely was the case with him and I. And it's like, that's how I think we finished the way we did. I thought after the fact, if it wasn't the two of us, you know, especially at the end, I probably would have pushed it all the way to the limit. I probably would have been, instead of 22 and a half hours, it probably would have been 24.
Sure.
You know, because when you're out there by yourself and it's pitch dark, you have no idea where you are. It's a whole different dynamic.
Right.
And you start really, it's really a head game at that point, even more so.
Talking to yourself versus...
Yeah. I will say, from that midnight to 6 a.m. stretch, Brad and I rolled across several individual riders. Almost, like, a couple times scared me. Like, you're going in the trail, you've got your headlights, that's all you can see. You're coming along, and you'll see like a bike on the side of the trail, and then there's a guy, like a rider, either laying down or sitting. I'll never forget this. It was a big old boulder. This guy's sitting cross-legged on this rock, just in
2 in the morning
in a daze, and we're like, what?
You all right, buddy?
Like, are you okay? He's like, yeah, I need a minute. You know, several people like that, just
at their deepest, darkest.
Totally just eyes are glassed over. Just we described them as like soulless. They just looked like soulless, like just nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, they're at their wits' end.
Yeah. So how does that work? You know, you've got that last 6 hour stretch. You're in the middle of nowhere. You're riding solo. A light goes out, or you give up, or you're at that give up stage. You have like I know the quitter thing, but I mean, you have to still find your own way out. Is there? Okay. So
there's no SAG vehicle that's going to come pick you up.
Right.
It is you are fully on your own. If you decide to quit, if you know where you are, you got to get yourself out. And if you have support, you got to somehow let them know where you are. If you've got a cell signal or whatever. But yeah, they're not coming to get you.
No, I don't even know how, like in my case, I don't know how I could have even possibly quit, because I'd never ridden there before, and so I had no idea where I was at any point. It's like, well, if I quit, I've got to hike my bike to somewhere, and maybe I'll find a road that I can go left or right, but who knows where that's going to lead you.
Yeah. This is a dumb question, but I mean, so in the 2 hour races, in the 3 hour races, you know, those short little ones, even then you have like those dark moments of, what am I, you know, you're halfway through the race, you're second guessing your training, you're second guess everything. This style race, how many dark moments, or how many like almost quitting or second guessing? Is there a lot of that going on, or is you just like, I'm in it for the long haul? I mean, there's got to be dark moments, but
yeah, I mean, go ahead first.
Oddly enough, my darkest moment came in the easiest, which was the first 20 miles, and that's when I had the hydration issue. And whenever I was pushing my bike, and like I literally was just dragging my left leg because it was cramping so bad. I was like, this is going to take me 24 hours to get through. And from a mental space, that was my darkest moment, which is really odd because it was like the easiest.
Yeah.
But then once I got hydrated and I started going, it definitely had some moments where I'm like, this is stupid. What am I doing? But yeah, I would say like mile 17 was my absolute darkest moment that I had, which is not common because especially the second and third leg was extremely difficult because by the third leg you're completely exhausted. But like I said, I'm stubborn, and so it's like if I have to push my bike the last 20 miles, that's what I'll do. I'm gonna finish. I don't care if it takes me 24 hours. But that first 20 miles, I was in rough shape.
Okay.
So I had, there's so many things over that period of time that can go wrong. You know, you can have a bike mechanical, you can be cramping, you can run out of water, something,
a wreck. I mean, lots of people wrecked.
I saw.
Luckily not, there's only one serious wreck where the guy had to go to the hospital, but yeah, lots of spills.
So like, I mean, I wouldn't characterize any of the moments as like, oh, I was just in a super dark place. Like, I had really tough moments. I can't say at any point I was like, oh, I'm ready to tap.
Okay.
Right.
Like, because I'm stubborn just like you, and Brad is too, and we weren't going to let each other quit, for one thing. But I had a lot of things like go really well for that race. No issues with the bike. The weather was threatening to storm, and it was warm that day, like pretty humid, but the rain held off.
Like,
at least for us. I mean, it ended up pouring in Ishpeming and at Jackson Park. I know it just poured, and we missed that.
Yeah,
I mean, it was wet.
I got about 10 minutes of rain,
Okay.
but other than that,
Yeah.
and that was when I was on the trail. So I mean, the canopy kind of protects you for most of it.
Yeah.
Rocks did get slick at that point, though. Really slick at that
Okay.
point.
So, like, I think the biggest challenge, at least for me, and I think for Brad as well, if I can speak for him, physically, yeah, it's tough. It was, you know, from midnight to 6 a.m., it's like, physically you're really tired, but I think it was just more the mental exhaustion and pushing ahead and trying, like, that was the toughest part of that.
Yeah.
Of finishing was just telling yourself, like, yep, I wasn't like physically hurting and like, oh, I just can't like go any further. It was just more the mental toughness to keep going.
Yeah.
Even knowing, like, when we went out at midnight, it was like, wow, we weren't thinking this was going to take this long. We were thinking like 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., somewhere in there.
Okay.
We rolled in at midnight to the last checkpoint, knowing when we go back out, there's probably another 5-6 hours left in this sucker.
Sure.
And that's a big hurdle.
That was a big one to get past.
Yeah, and a lot of people couldn't. Just said,
sure,
now. And that, to what you were saying, you know, tapping out, like, that is the point where you want to. It's like, well, do I have another 5-6 hours in me?
Yeah.
Because after that, it's not very easy to get out.
The only comparison I've got is the lumberjack third lap, you know, which is not anywhere near what you guys just did, but, you know, that's that whole mental, the fact that you're right where the pit is, where all your, you know, if you're at that Jackson Park, whatever, that's where you have support. That's where you could have, you know, somebody take you back to the car. That's where you become a man.
Yeah.
One thing that helped me, and I don't know if you guys did or not, I assume you
or
did,
a woman.
but
man or woman.
Man or woman, is I broke it up into like 5-mile chunks versus 20-mile chunks. So I'm like, all right, 5 more miles. Let me get to this 5 more miles. And then, like, I get to that 5 miles, like, I've only got 3 miles left, or I've only got 2 miles left before. And that's if Todd's Jackson Park stops are correct.
Yeah.
Which I think the first Jackson Park he said was 19 miles. I feel like it was more than that. I can't remember. But breaking it up in little like little small sections, like, all right, let's get through this next.
Good idea.
That's why on that first 20, I'm telling you, it was the hardest for me was that, because my left leg was shot. I was like, there's no way I'm going to complete this within before the cutoff. I was going to complete it. I don't care if it took me 30 hours in my head.
Yeah.
My mental space was, I'm going to complete it, but it could take me a long, long time. But
How many
Yeah.
DNFs? So they had. Where's the DNF rate right now? It used to be really high, and it went down.
You guys were like at 52 or 48% for the 100. Was
No, it was higher than that, actually.
Was it?
So, I mean, it really depends on the weather. I mean, it's always a high DNF rate to begin with, just because of the trail and how
Right.
tough it is. But you throw in some rain, you throw in some, if it's cold or hot and humid, like, it goes up. This year, there was, for the 100, it was 24% that DNS'd.
Didn't
So
start,
they
okay.
didn't even start.
Because of the rain the day before?
Could be
potentially?
for the rain.
It was
the
supposed
threat
to
of
rain all day, right?
The conditions. So the trail was pretty, like, it started pretty slick, you know, because it rained the night before.
Sure.
So I think that really made the decision for some people.
Okay.
The DNF rate, I think, was, if I remember, it was closer to 60%.
Wow.
So you have 24% that didn't even start, and then of the ones that did, you know, start the race, 60% of those didn't finish.
So that's a heck of accomplishment.
So
That's,
yeah, so Brad and I got done, and we were feeling pretty good about ourselves.
Yeah, heck
You
yeah.
should.
And I mean, and that's why I love, like, doing tough things. It's like,
That
I love doing things that most people wouldn't.
even sign up for.
Right, wouldn't even sign up for, wouldn't attempt, think it's crazy. I love, like, I love everything this race stands for, and just pushing yourself, physically challenging yourself, but also mentally, like, challenging yourself. I know Todd will say, you know, what's good about this race, you know, and that physically, yeah, it challenges you, but we have a lot of racers that will do this, the Marji, that, you know, they're really strong. They're that type A person. It's like, I've got everything mapped out. But this race throws so many, like, curveballs at you, and, like, messes with you. So it's a whole new dimension to it. And
You got to be able to adapt.
yeah,
in
you've
this
got to be able to really adapt to
Persevere.
those things and persevere, and that's what I love about it.
Right.
It's that's like kind of separates,
one. Yes. Yep.
like, you know, not to say anybody who doesn't, like, if you attempt that race and you do 90 miles of it, like, that is quite an accomplishment in my book. Like, that stuff's no joke.
Right.
So, like, to go out and DNF, like, I mean, because I did it last year, like, you hold your head up high, because that both those races are a heck of a race.
they're tough. Or at least the 50 was very,
So
very
John,
tough.
hearing all this, like, what's you thinking?
No, he messaged me like 2 days later. He's like, "You ready for the 100?" And I'm like, "Nope." Like, I'm definitely going to try to. That's another thing. Like, you can't just say, "Oh, I want to do this race," and think you're gonna do it. Like, it sells out, or like it sells out in like,
Oh, it's like 90 seconds.
yeah, 90
for
seconds
this
or
year's
something.
race. I mean, and they're going to open registration in, like, I think it's October 14th.
Shh.
Don't tell anybody.
It's not. Don't
But
tell me the
last
time.
year, when it opened up, it was 90 seconds.
Yeah, it sells
Okay.
out fast. So if you're privileged enough to be able to get into the race,
I like joking
But-
with you guys whenever there's a big race and sign-ups at, like, midnight or whatever. I like joking with you guys. Oh, I don't have any phone signal. My phone's not working.
I am going to try to sign up for the 50 next year. And so I had a mental thing this year is because I had a friend doing the race. He's not as fast of a rider. He's a very good rider, but not as fast as a rider. And I had a lot of external factors going on that I had to deal with. And so I had to decide, do I ride with my buddy who is not as fast, so I won't finish as fast, which, whatever, I get to ride with a buddy, or do I just try to fight my own demons and just go at my own pace? And I ultimately decided to just go at my own pace. But that's something that I guess I'm assuming other people have that same kind of mental anguish to kind of figure out before the races. Do I hang out with my friends and ride, or do I just tackle the course for myself?
That'd be a great question for you, because like I know that you guys do a lot of those races together, and you know there's times where one's in better shape than the other. There's like all those types of things. Like, I mean, I already know your answer, but go ahead and what's your take on that? Would you suggest doing it together, or you love doing it together?
Yeah, so I mean, I've done both, and there's advantages to both, like doing it solo versus with a buddy or a couple of buddies, and I think I like them both. Like, okay. I like both. The advantage, I mean, if you're going to do it with a buddy, it's like you said, it's like you got to have a pretty good history, know each other's like strengths and abilities and weaknesses, and be able to like experience that, work through that on the course and the race, and be able to like accept, like, if one of you has an issue, like, you know, how are you going to handle that?
Right.
You know, like, are you going to have you decided ahead of time, like, oh, we're sticking together, like, we're going to, you know, get on the side of the trail and just fix whatever the issue is on your bike or whatever.
Right. If one's got non-stop cramps, is one going to go ahead? Is one going to...
So that brings that in there, you know, those kinds of things, those kinds of challenges. But like I said, it's like when you're in a dark place, when your buddy's in a dark place, you can motivate each other and keep each other going. So there's a lot of benefits too, not to mention being in the woods and there's bears and mountain lions and stuff that want to eat you. You know? Right. So it's like, I was going to sacrifice Brad.
Whoever's faster on foot. So I gotta
right. And most of the trail, you're going to be on foot, especially that last 20 to 40 miles. There's a lot of walking. So if you can push Brad over and take off running, you'll be golden.
One of the coolest things, though, just speaking of like riding in the dark, we turned our lights on around 8:15 at night and had them on until 6 in the morning. So like 10 hours of dark, and that went way better than I've ridden in the dark before and done some night rides. You're going slow. That, you know, I saw some really quite the cool setups. Like people had 2 lights on their handlebars, one up here. I mean, it was like a big old semi coming through.
Spotlight going through. Yeah.
I had 1 handlebar light the entire time.
That's it?
I mean, I swapped that out once. Okay. So I basically did 2 lights the entire time.
Wow.
On the handlebar, not even on my helmet. And it was plenty. Okay. You know, and the lights have a low, medium, high. Mm-hmm. I had it on low. Okay. And that worked great for me. And so it was, I mean, it gives you enough light to see, and I didn't, at no point felt like, you know, I was like going in the dark and not like, I could see far enough ahead.
One of the small perks to 4 mile an hour average, right?
Yeah. Yeah, right. Which is like, if you're going any faster, you'd want more light. Right. But one of the coolest things I'll never forget is we're going along, it was probably 3, 4 in the morning, pitch dark. We're in who knows where. It's dark. You look around and they're like, there's a light. Oh, there's cool. There's a light. There's a light. That's cool. It was like, oh, there's a rider, there's a rider. It's like you're alone and you feel really alone, but then you see, oh, nope. There's riders around.
Yeah.
If you were
it's
riding,
kind of neat.
that is cool. If you were
And it's-
riding solo, you'd be, wait up!
Well, then we'd be going along, and it might be a little downhill section, but then you'd see a light up there, and you'd be like, "Darn it, we're going up that way."
Oh, yeah.
But it was one of the coolest things. It's just like you're alone in the middle of the woods, but you're not really, because you can see.
I love when
These
we
little
night ride
lights.
and see lights like that.
That's what I read a lot of
that
the
was cool.
read a lot of the comments about that, and a lot of people say that's one of the coolest things is like you feel like you're alone, but you look around and you see lights down below you, lights up above you, and you know all these lights are going through the kind of the same
I'll
thing.
say, just to add to that, one of the things that surprised me about this race, I mean, other than it taking as long as it took me and Brad, I figured this race would spread out quite quickly, with it being as hard and as long as it is. We were with a lot of riders for quite a bit of the race. So there was never huge stretches where there was no one in sight.
Okay.
And I expected that a lot, like it was going to be the majority of the race, and it just wasn't. It was kind of the surprising. I know they had record numbers,
Sign up.
for the 100 and the 50. In
remember
total,
how
I
many-
think it was
how many signed
1,000
up?
total
Okay.
for the 50 and 100 combined, I think.
It is a lot.
And
yeah.
but you spread that out over all that stuff,
Right.
and you figure there's going to be stretches where you're alone, and it wasn't like we were with groups of people for a majority of the race.
Did either of you come across somebody, hopefully not, but with any big old gash, things where they're bleeding and needed Band-Aids or their bikes were broke? Do you guys see anything crazy like that on the trail?
I did not, just because of I decided the before the race to just kind of be out front. So I was like probably 3 or 4 rows back of bikes when we started, and
As you should.
and so
I was thinking same
I was
thing.
like, this is from my own mental whatever, as like I want to be up front, and now I didn't have the same group of riders all the way through the 62 miles, but each leg I was with a different group of riders, and you just kind of, at some point they're passing you, at some point you're passing them. But I saw one, I didn't see the wreck, but I showed up like maybe 30 seconds later, and it was just in a turn, the guy was going too fast, and he just kind of went straight off.
Okay.
But he didn't get hurt, and there was another guy in front of me that had stopped. He's probably 45 seconds to a minute in front of me, and stopped and helped the guy out. So the camaraderie is, it's amazing.
Imagine, yeah.
We saw quite, not a lot, but several
Mechanicals or
mechanicals,
people breaking down?
people, and like snap chains and flat tires. Saw all that, and I saw some scrapes and
Yep.
blood, and that people had clearly taken a wreck, and I saw several as well. One of the guys that we were riding with just slid out on a bridge. There's a lot of bridges out there, like wooden boardwalks and bridges, and a lot of it was, because it rained, it was pretty slick.
Pretty slick, yeah.
One of the guys, Steve, that was with us, it was almost like slow motion, just slid right off the bridge, and thankfully didn't get hurt or anything, or didn't do anything to his bike, but it was a little drop off, and he ended up right on his feet, but
Wow.
it could have been bad. And then now that I'm talking about it, thinking about it, we saw there's a section, there's 2 stories. Top of the World is a section of the
Heard of
trail about 5 miles into the 100, and it's a beautiful overlook. They've got a guy in a Scottish kilt with a bagpipe playing. Super, super cool. Well, you get there, and then you've got to immediately, and it's a climb to get to it, and then you're immediately going down a lot of big rocks and like slick stuff. Most people, almost everybody, walks down it. One guy decides, as we're like almost to the bottom of it, he's going to ride it. Of course, doesn't make it. So he goes down hard. Thankfully, he didn't get hurt or anything, but it's just not smart.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things. It's like when you're doing a race like that, you got to be smart because you're tired. It's terrain we're not used to. It was wet. Like, you got to play it
That's
safe.
a survival race.
Right.
Yeah.
So you need to be smart about it. But one other instance, and this was probably, I don't know what time it was. It was dark. It was like pitch dark. Brad and I are going along. We're on this trail. It drops off on the right side. We come across a group. This guy had gone down it, like just came like around the corner and just, I think it was fatigue.
Okay.
And your judgment is not the sharpest when you're really tired. I mean, it was at least a 6 to 8 foot drop that he had fallen into, like, and there was trees and brush and all that, and he was way down in there. It was a miracle that he did not hurt himself, break anything, like get a concussion or anything. We had to help him, like, as there's 3 buddies with him, get out of there, get his
like
bike
form
out
a
of there.
chain down the hill.
I mean, his bike, like, survived and didn't get damaged. Like, all his lights and his Garmin mount were all shoved, like, flipped up.
So he went over the top. Yeah.
And his brakes had locked up on his front tire. So we got it all back, and he was just like super thankful, was going to keep pushing on, but it was a miracle that he didn't get hurt. But there's a lot out there where you could really get hurt.
Yeah. Like you're saying, like even if you were to, like, I've ridden in Marquette and a couple different places, those are technical when you're not fatigued.
Yeah.
Like you're out there for just a 2-hour ride, and they're technical. You mix in hours and hours on the bike, dehydrated, all these other factors, and that might be what happens too. Is some people pre-ride those sections, like the guy on top of the world. He's like, "Oh, I go down this all the time."
Yeah.
Well, he's probably tired,
Right?
And then so try doing it when you're whooped.
I think that's what, like, those 6-hour blocks that Brad and I did, the last 2 20-mile blocks that took us 6 hours each. It's like, there's a lot of things. I think a lot of sections of those trails we probably under normal circumstances would ride, but a lot of those, like, we'd come across like some rooty, rocky stuff, and it was steep downhill or a climb, and it's like,
it's not worth it.
It's not worth
Right.
it. So, like, and that plays into it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're gonna finish or not, is just being smart about it.
Yep.
Knowing, like, hey, 90 miles into this sucker, I'm tired.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, like, as sharp mentally as I would be at mile 0. Like, I'm gonna play this safe.
That's smart.
Yeah.
So that really factors in it. It takes more time, but it's like, how bad do you want to finish?
Right.
That's a big part of it, just finishing.
Well, I did. So, not many major wrecks or bike failures that I saw, except about 6 miles left, I came across a guy that one of his cleat screws had come out, and I decided to ride flats, so I was on flats. And I'm like, dude,
You're crazy, by the way.
Flats? No, I still, like, I would do flats again and again and again.
Good for you.
I don't want to be strapped into my bike on some of that nastiness. But I was like, dude, I so wish I had a screw for you. I was like, but there's going to be some guys coming in the next 15, 20 minutes. They're all they're all clipless, so they're probably going to have a screw. But I felt so bad for the guy because like 6 miles to go.
Oh my god!
And that's he couldn't be pedaled in. He had the egg beaters.
Yep.
So you don't have a platform at all to
hard
try to rest your foot.
Yep.
So he was just walking his bike, and I was like, "Good luck to you," and hopefully someone behind me
Good
was
note
able
for
to.
people. That's probably a little something you should bring with you. An extra screw.
Yeah,
for
an
your
extra
pedals.
screw.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was on flat, so I didn't have to think about that. But definitely, if you're riding clipless, bring a couple extra screws.
That's a great idea. So hey guys, as we wrap up, let's people who are sitting on the fence. I'm not talking to myself, by the way. People are sitting on the fence, have never done it, thinking about doing it. What would you say to them, Dan?
Well, first off, my recommendation would be if you're thinking, oh, Marji, that looks cool. The 50 is what I would start with. You need to get a good
taste. Yeah.
good flavor of what riding up there is. The 50 will push you to your limits, but you can do it in a reasonable amount of time. I would not go right to the 100. And I would say if you're looking to push yourself mentally, physically, that this race will do it. And it's not for everyone. Like, you got to go in knowing what you're getting into, because you will find out what you're made of.
Yeah.
It's a good thought.
I would agree. Like, if you're someone that likes to push yourself, it's not like, hey, let me go out and do like a 60-mile ride. It's completely different than a 60-mile ride. But if you're someone that kind of, you kind of have to like pain, right, to do this race.
Yeah.
So if you're
like to suffer.
Yeah, if you don't mind suffering and you want to figure out from a physical and mental standpoint, like how far you can push yourself, this is the race. You
got to have a little bit of like insanity in you to do it.
Sure.
I mean, honestly,
Yeah,
because I don't know how
exactly.
many times we were going along, and we're like pushing our bikes, and like, this is insane.
Yeah.
Like, this is insane. Like,
Yeah.
this is crazy. And
You know,
we
you
just
just
kept
gave-
going.
You just gave me a thought. Like, I wonder, there's got to be people that have done it, that have been through like basic training or through like some of that stuff. I wonder how that compares. Some
Yeah.
of the mental toughness. I wonder
Yeah.
how that compares.
Yeah.
But go ahead, finish.
And, well, I'm sure. Going through like any kind of military basic training will prepare you mentally for a lot of things. And I've never done that. All I know is this. It would be, in my opinion, it's very difficult to train for because you're going to see a lot of things that you thought you knew about and a lot of writing you thought you knew about, but it's completely different. With that said, anybody that wants or is curious about it, I say try to sign up and do it. I mean, because at the very least, one, getting through even a portion of it is an accomplishment, but it takes you to a place that you can really drive and push yourself. And this is not, so let me also say, this is not a race like, I got to be first.
Yeah.
This is a race, a self race. And it's not necessarily about time. It's about persevering and finishing. Like,
Yeah.
I had no illusion that I was going to be first by any means. My only goal was to get through the race without dropping out.
Yeah.
And
You bring up a good point. I think this race, I know you guys well, so we do talk about like hours and things like that, because 21 hours on the bike. But I think this race is more of a you finished. Hardly.
oh, for
A
sure.
lot of the racers aren't even. You might say how long did it take you, Josh, or how long did it take you, whatever. But you finished.
Yeah.
That's more of the topic.
Finishing
The,
is key.
What I've really enjoyed just post race is on the group page, the Marji Talk page, story after story after story of people, writing their experience and just what it meant, and that it's so much more than just a bike ride or a bike race. It's the doing it with a buddy, doing it with a significant other, or there was even like father and daughter and mom and her daughter or son, and just the being able to experience that, to push yourself, to like overcome a lot of the mental hurdles and physical hurdles that you have too. It's just inspiring to like read those stories and just know that, you know, I was able to do that and be a part of it. And
well, I just saw a guy at Perrin Brewing that had the hat on similar to that. You know, so you're walking by. So anybody that has that hat on, or the lumberjack has a little bit of that, you know, where you see people with the different hats and stuff, you're instantly, there's like a brotherhood, not with me with the guy with the hat on, but when I walk past him, instantly pull over, talk to him for 10 minutes, you know.
Unless you're like Carlos Delgado, who will buy the gear and wear it. I had to plug that.
Oh man, never wear the gear if you don't do the race. Just saying.
That's funny.
Carlos.
That's funny.
No, but that, I mean, that though, when you finish something like that, that hat could be $100. I'm buying one. You know what I mean? It's like you earned it. And talk about a brotherhood that, you know, you're part of, you know, brotherhood, sisterhood, that you're part of, and like you say, that community group. Brad added me to it so I could,
you
check
get nothing for doing this race. Like, I mean, you get a buckle if you're under 12.
Yeah.
I mean, there was 10
for the 100.
There was 10 people that got a buckle, I think, this year.
I think so, yeah.
And a hand forged, like, by this Gordon blacksmith guy up there, like, really, really cool. I'm never getting that.
I can't imagine someone.
I mean, you get those tokens. I mean, and those tokens
are priceless.
cost like 2 cents to make, but they're priceless.
Yeah.
It's like they mean so much, and
absolutely.
It's just what you said. It's like the experience, and that it's priceless.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
Excellent
guys.
Race.
Well, any closing thoughts? Otherwise, amazing race, huge challenge. You know, make sure you know what you're getting into. But as you said, sign up. Don't be nervous about it.
Yeah,
I mean, be healthy nervous about it, but
healthy nervous. I mean, if you want to challenge yourself, sign up for it. If you only get through 20 miles, you made it through 20 miles of a hard race. Yeah. So
for the 100, you know, if you want to do it, have at it. I will sag for you, but I'm good.
I don't think I'd ever hear you say this.
I really am good.
This is the first, and we got this on recording. First time Dan saying,
I'm totally okay with that.
Dan is our guy who will sign up for anything. It's the first time I've ever seen him get a little shy about signing back up.
I make no bones about that.
That tells a lot right there.
That's the real deal.
That tells me a lot right there. So, well, thanks, guys.
Yep.
Thanks for coming out. And thanks for checking it out, guys. Hopefully this is helpful to you, informative, entertaining. We're going to keep doing stuff like this with different events. And subscribe, like, ask questions below. Marji, craziness. All right.
Craziness, but fun.
Thank you. Good job, guys. Woohoo! All right. Good job.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, that was good. That was good.
I hope.
Dude, I forgot about, I was